Hi and welcome to the video. I'm Damon, this is Dame Over, and today, June the 4th, 2020, is the release of the final update for Battlefield 5, the summer update. We're no longer going to receive any more support or any more content, and as a result, this update has been particularly big. There are loads of new weapons, 2 new maps to have a look at, which I'm going to take you through today, and a whole bunch of other stuff, which I'll get videos out about in the future. But today, like I said, I'm going to focus on the 2 new maps. There's Provence and Marj. So the clips you're going to see in the background are going to relate to each of the maps, and I've basically got extended clips so you get a good idea of what the maps look like rather than focusing on the kills that I got. Just trying to show you guys a bit more of the landscape than usual. So let's have a look at Provence. So Provence will be available to play in the following game modes. There's Conquest, which is what you're looking at now, Breakthrough, Team Deathmatch, and Squad Conquest. So Provence takes its name from the region in southern France, which is famous for its lavender fields, which you'll see here. There's a whole bunch of them. Literally couldn't work out what flowers they were because they're quite low res when you have a look at them, but anyway, trying to work out what they were. Turns out it's lavender, and there are loads of these fields which are dotted around, and you can even see them in the map overview. Not providing much cover or much use in the game, to be perfectly honest, but it looks really nice. So Provence is kind of split into 2 different sections of the map. There's a very open region around the D flag, but in the actual town itself, amongst the buildings, there are loads of different sight lines and alleyways, long and short, that you can use and take advantage of. There are a limited amount of buildings you can actually get into and use in the game, like in the original iteration of the map. So lots of the fighting is actually done on street level. There are a few landmarks that you need to be aware of, the main one being the church in the middle, which is basically a carbon copy of all of the other churches. It has basically the same layout like the one in Arras, but it doesn't have the bell tower, so you can't get right on top and shoot down at people. And I also had a really annoying time trying to jump out of this window. I'm just rubbing myself up against the wall over and over again here. And unfortunately, it wasn't very consistent because if you watch the rest of this clip, I head to the back of the church and I'm able to jump out the window. Really annoying, but something you guys might need to be aware of just in case you're trying to exit the church in a pinch. Now, once you're in amongst the buildings, I think that's the most interesting part. The gameplay can be very fast, it can be quite furious, people running around, sliding, taking advantage of all the different movement mechanics that are in the game, and making sure that they're SMGs and even possibly shotguns. I didn't see many in this game, but they are definitely felt. Most of the engagements, it seems, will be short to medium range, but it doesn't mean those guys using semi-auto rifles or the scout class will struggle at all. There are longer sight lines that you can take advantage of. As you can see, I was using a semi-auto rifle, and as long as I was picking my fights properly, I wasn't struggling at all. Now, like I said, with the scout class, you won't be struggling to get those sight lines so you can shoot people at a distance, but there might be a bit of a wait in between fights because people will be moving across those alleys and those roadways very, very quickly. But something I think is very important for you guys to be aware of in these matches, using the spotting flares was a real hindrance against our team. Because of the design of these alleyways and roadways, it meant that our team was quite often bunched up, and the enemy team using their spotting flares very well made our lives very, very difficult. It was difficult to break out around the sides and take advantage of those flanking routes. So if you guys do use the scout class, make sure you're getting resupplied very often so you can keep those spotting flares coming. Now, that part of the map in particular, I've got no complaints about. I think it's very well designed. I think it's very interesting. There's lots of different things you can do with the different parts of the map and lots of different ways to play and lots of different weapons that are very, very useful. One issue I do have with Provence is that it is quite heavily tank dominant. And this is obviously in that open part of the map that I was talking about before. The tanks can sit so far back because the map is very big. I think maybe a little bit too big. They can sit so far back and fire off as many rounds as they like without being able to be punished because they're just at such a distance that it's very difficult to fight them. So the tank v tank battles kind of have a bit of a standoff, and capturing the D flag with this windmill here, very reminiscent of Battlefield 1, eventually turns into a stalemate. So much so that myself and Get Good Guy, who were playing in this game together, ended up just running back towards the town because we wanted some action. That sounded far sexier than I thought it was going to. Anyway, so that's a quick overview on Provence. Let's have a look at Marj. So similarly, it will be available in these game modes: Conquest, Breakthrough, Team Deathmatch, and Squad Conquest. And again, Conquest is what you're seeing right now. One thing to note about Marj, and something that I particularly enjoy, that it is only infantry v infantry. There are some vehicles that you can use for transportation, like the Jeep, but the vehicles don't have any offensive capabilities. Now, this map at first look worried me a little bit because it is quite linear, but in a similar way that Provence used the different alleyways and roadways to create flanking routes, the same idea has been used in the design of Marj. The C flag is of particular interest because it sits outside of the main encampment, and as you can see here along the curtain wall, there are several different points you can use to push into the middle and flank the enemy team. But bear in mind, if you are attempting to flank using this route, you're going to be quite easy pickings as there's not that much cover outside. I think that's a pretty fair trade-off, to be perfectly honest, risk and reward. And now onto the main portion of the map itself, onto the main encampment, and similarly, spotting flare is going to be very, very powerful for this one. But as you'll see in these clips, there are loads of different ways you can parkour your way around the map. There are numerous vertical levels so you can gain an advantage on your enemies, and often when you do get the high ground, there's generally less cover. So again, it lends itself to a very fast-paced way to play. SMGs, LMGs, and assault rifles are very powerful here, as you will often come up against enemies at very close range. It seemed that the players that were dominating quite heavily in these games were the ones that were using SMGs, and thanks to them, there was literally just smoke everywhere. Everyone in the medic class is using smoke, absolutely great tactic, but yes, there was smoke everywhere so you couldn't see through anything, which added a lot to the whole ambience and excitement factor in this map. Like I said, I was initially worried about the linear fashion of this map. It can quite easily turn into players using the scout class and having a snipe off with people from a long distance. It ends up not being very fun to play because it slows the game down so much. But props to DICE on this one, they've literally stopped people from being able to use that tactic by putting big walls in the way, for instance. Players are forcefully channeled towards each other, so they have to fight at relatively close range, and similar to Provence, so if you're in that sort of town area, on our Marj, most of the fighting will be done at short to medium range. I really enjoyed this map, and to be honest, from my experience so far, I don't have any complaints. Maybe the only thing that I actually really struggled with was the mantling. Again, this is like my worst enemy. My worst enemy in Battlefield games are small stones, and me trying to climb up this rubble was very, very frustrating. So try to be mindful when you're trying to get a vantage point over an enemy and not get caught out and shot in the back. So that's it for a very brief overview of the two new maps of Provence and Al Marj. If you guys want to see these maps in more details, then make sure you hit me up in the comments. Once there are more servers available, it'll be far easier to get into one that's less populated, and I can show you guys particular landmarks and give you tips and tricks on how to take advantage of the layout. I'm going to be getting some new videos out to you guys as soon as I can with all of the content from the new update, so make sure if you're not subscribed, you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you do hit the subscribe button. Here's a very quick thank you to my Dame Operatives, those of you guys supporting the channel through Patreon. If you want to become a patron yourself, there's a link in the description and the pinned comment, and you can support the channel from $1 a month. I love you all as much as I love pizza, I don't know, and until next time, that's Dame over. Peace.